Welcome, everyone. This is my favorite season, my favorite topic, gratitude. It's a month of gratitude. So I'm so glad that we can celebrate in that together today. Yeah. So we are continuing in our series, the Sunday morning series based on Eric Butterworth's classic book, Spiritual Economics, right? And if you've been in Unity or New Thought for any length of time, you know the importance of eliminating as much as possible negative, limiting thinking, that self-defeating self-talk. Some people refer to it as stinking thinking, and to embrace instead more positive possibility thinking, right? And why is that so important? Because our thoughts, thoughts, more accurately our energy, which is really created by our thoughts, tend to create our experience in life. It informs how we respond to situations and, for the most part, creating those situations. Basic New Thought 101, right? However, in practice, it's not as easy as it sounds. Right? It's not so easy to control our thinking, to consciously shift those, it's a negative thought, I got to shift that, and what's the positive thought that's the opposite of that, and I got to think that, and what's a life-affirming thing. And, sometimes that's difficult, particularly when things in our life are challenging. So, an easier way and a more effective way that I have found to approach it, and that Eric Butterworth talks about in the 5th chapter of his book, is to develop a grateful heart. To develop a grateful heart. Not necessarily to be grateful for specific things, but we're really talking about developing that energy of gratitude. And when we do that, positive thinking, possibility thinking just comes naturally. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. When we're in a grateful frame of mind, it becomes easier to see the possibilities in our life. Did you ever notice that? When you're in a grateful frame of mind, it's just like you can see, they were there all the time, but you didn't notice. You can see them more clearly. You can see the love and the abundance that is all around. You notice the good in other people. It just, all of that becomes easier. And it also becomes easier to see and to know that we are an integral part of that love and that abundance. All of that becomes easier. Butterworth says that true gratitude is not a reactionary emotion. It's a causative energy. A causative energy. So, in other words, when wonderful things are happening in our lives and people are nice to us and people do something nice for us, it's easy to be grateful, right? It's easy to express our gratitude. That's easy. And that's good, that's all good. We should. But it's reactionary, because when things are not going so well and people are mean to us or disappoint us in some way, we're generally the opposite of grateful. Right? So a grateful heart is really a consciousness that we develop. A consciousness that we develop that helps us to see the underlying perfection of everything in our lives. Helps us to see that we are really all so loved and that everything is working together for our good. It helps to center us in the awareness of that underlying abundant love and abundant substance that is continually flowing through us and into our lives in direct proportion to our grateful awareness of it. Say that again. Centering ourselves in gratitude opens us to that abundant love and abundant substance that's always there, always flowing through us and into our lives, but only to the degree of our grateful awareness of it. So that's the attitude and the consciousness that we begin to build as we practice gratitude. Now, if you've been brought up in a traditionally religious home, you may have been taught that God commands us to be grateful. That it's somehow our obligation to express gratitude to God. Which is, but it's interesting because, Christian mystic Meister Eckhart said, he challenged this idea 700 years ago when he said, I never thank God for loving me because he can't help himself. It's his nature to. It's his nature to. Isn't that fabulous? How about that for a new thought? Of course, he was tried for heresy for saying it. That and other things that were way ahead of his time. Right? Way ahead of his time. Talk about being way ahead of your time. 2,500 years ago, Plato famously said, a grateful mind is a great mind that eventually attracts to itself great things. Isn't that great? See, wisdom has been around for a long time. There's nothing new in new thought. It's been around for a long time. It's just that it's taken us a while to catch up. It's taken us a while. We have to evolve to a certain place in order to, to open, to accept those profound truths. I know even for myself, when I was reading this book 25 years ago, when I first read Spiritual Economics, I had trouble seeing how I was going to make it work in my life. I could really get intuitively that what I was reading was right? It resonated with me, but putting it into practice in my life is a whole other thing. Because I had a tough time figuring out how I was supposed to be grateful for working at a job that I really didn't like, barely making enough money to make ends meet, trying to figure out how I was going to do what I really love to do and make money at it. And, my mom had died, around that time. It's like, what in there was to be grateful for? I couldn't see. Couldn't see the underlying perfection that was in my life. I couldn't see that my life was already so blessed. I couldn't see the possibility. So it took a while. It took practice, is what it took. It took practice to begin to open up to that idea of, this is a consciousness I have to build. What around me can I be grateful for? The beauty that's all around me. The fact that I'm healthy today. The fact that I'm alive and breathing today. The fact that I have a job today. The fact that, I can be there and open my heart in love to others. Just all of that, being grateful for all of that. And the idea, it took a while to build the idea that all physical form of money, or anything in our lives, is just a symbol. No matter how limited it looks, no matter how small it is, that's just a symbol. It's a representation of the abundant source that underlies it. That infinite, abundant substance that we are all literally swimming in. And as we practice gratitude, we begin to see that. We begin to see it and continuing to be open and building that grateful heart. It builds an energy that attracts to us opportunities. It attracts to us possibilities. It keeps the flow of good through our bodies and into our lives. Keeps the flow open. So Butterworth also talks in his book about what blessing something really means. To bless something actually means to confer prosperity upon. to confer prosperity upon. And he says in the book that we are all projecting some kind of thought onto everything we have and experience in our lives. Always projecting some kind of thought. You know, it's like that, if you've studied A Course in Miracles, they say there's no neutral thought. There's either, you know, we're either blessing something or in a way kind of cursing something. We're either thinking with love or we're not with love. So think about what thoughts you may be projecting right now on your, for instance, your job, or lack thereof. What you may be projecting, what thoughts you may be projecting onto your income level. You know, are you conferring blessing upon it? Are we thinking in terms of abundance? Are we blessing all of that? Or is there maybe a little bit of restrictive thinking, a little bit of negative thinking, a little bit of resentment in there? Think about what you may be projecting onto your relationships. You know, either your committed relationships or friends and family. We'll all get a great opportunity to pay attention, to observe what we are projecting onto our friends and family this Thursday at Thanksgiving, many of us. And, you know, don't judge yourself, just pay attention. Oh, what am I projecting? Is there any criticism, any judgmental thinking in there, any kind of unresolved resentment, maybe? Or am I blessing that person? You know, am I seeing that person as whole, as on their own path, blessing them wherever they are on their path, wherever they are in their growth? Great opportunity. Think about what you may be projecting onto the activity of paying your bills. Here's an interesting way to look at that. You know, it's very often, I know for myself, just another one. Here's another way to look at it, is that paying our bills, it's really an act of exchange of energy. We're exchanging the energy, the love energy in the form of money for goods and services we've already received. We've already enjoyed. Who doesn't enjoy having lights on? And heat in your house when it's cold, and air conditioning when it's hot, and, you know, clothing and food. Whatever it is we're receiving a bill for, think about that. Wow, I enjoyed that already. Now I'm going to share my love, that energy. It's an energy exchange. So how we look at things, are we looking at it in terms of restrictive thinking, negative thinking, any resentment energy in there, or are we conferring prosperity upon? Are we thinking in terms of, this is something I am so grateful for in my life? You know, are we blessing things and people? Our attitude about things creates an energy that either restricts the flow of good and keeps us bound to painful experiences in our life, or with our attitude, we're creating an energy that prospers and enlivens, you know, and expands. So pay attention to your attitude about things, situations, and people. The goal here really is to really embrace that attitude of gratitude. You know, not just say it, it's a kind of clever thing to say, but to really live it, really live that attitude of gratitude. And Butterworth gives us a perfect example of this by relating the story in the Bible about Jesus feeding the multitudes. You know, this, many of you know this story. It's actually the only miracle story in all four Gospels. So maybe there's something in there for us. It might be significant. And of course, I, hesitate to share stories from the Bible here because I'm sensitive to the fact that it's a mixed crowd. You know, we have recovering Catholics, we have Jewish people, we have, every purist science of mind people. We have Sufis. And we embrace it all. But I think this is a story, particularly if we look at it from Butterworth's point of view, that can really expand boundaries and open up something for us. Okay, so as the story goes, Jesus is traveling around and he's sharing his incredible wisdom, which is really profound for people who are hearing this for the first time, and sharing his light and sharing healings for people who are coming to him. And of course, word is spreading, crowds are gathering, lots and lots of crowds everywhere he goes. And on one particular day, there's a crowd of 5,000 that gather to hear this amazing person talk and receive healings. And he welcomes them all. He welcomes them all. He teaches and he performs the healings. And at the end of the day, just like any other end of a long day, people are getting kind of hungry, And so his disciples are like nudging him. Why don't you tell them to go back to their villages, rest up, get a little something to eat. And he turns to them and says, no, you feed them. Now, here, now. And they're like, dude. We only have 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. That's not going to go very far. And you could see Jesus just taking a deep breath, muster some patience and saying, it's okay. Just tell them to sit in groups of 50. It's all going to be okay. Now, do you notice the repetition in the number 5 there? 5 loaves of bread, 5,000 people, groups of 50. It's interesting, the spiritual significance of 5, it means, it signifies the divine incarnation in man. It's also grace. It signifies grace, divine grace. And we're going to be working with that number in just a few minutes, so keep that in mind. All right, so the Bible tells us then he gathers these together, he looks up to heaven, he gives thanks, and he blesses what he has, and what he has suddenly multiplies into enough food to feed all 5,000 people with 12 baskets left over. So Butterworth tells us that when he's looking up to, when he has this in his hands, he's looking up to heaven, he is not reaching out towards God because he made it very clear the kingdom of heaven is within. Why would he be telling us? No, the kingdom of heaven is within. What Butterworth says is that he's actively turning away from the appearance of limitation, the appearance of lack, and going to see it from a higher perspective, from the realm of the absolute. Remember we talked about that a couple weeks ago. The realm of the absolute, where it's infinite source, infinite supply. He's opening up to that consciousness, and then from that awareness, he gives thanks. Not for the limited provisions, but he gives thanks from the consciousness of abundance, from that elevated consciousness, from the presence of spirit that those few loaves suggested, represented. So whether you take this story literally or metaphorically, and of course in Unity tends to see the Bible more metaphorically, it has a powerful lesson for us, a powerful, it shows us the power of gratitude and the power of turning away from the appearance of limitation, going into a higher realm, seeing our lives from a higher point of view, seeing it, getting into that elevated consciousness, into that realm of the absolute, and from that place, giving thanks for all the things and all the experiences in our life. From that place, blessing everything in our lives. And if we can do that, boy, that can change everything in an instant, miraculously. We can have our own miracle story. So it takes practice, though, right? It takes practice. Practicing developing a grateful heart, practicing becoming aware of all of the blessings in our lives, and celebrating those things on a daily basis. And that can help us. That gives us access to that infinite source. It gives us access to that elevated consciousness where all is possibility, where all is love, where all is abundance. That's what our practice does. And then it just becomes easy to live in that vibration of possibility and positivity.